Hello and welcome to Clipping In, the second in the Fireside Chat series, Winter Hydration. It's tempting now that the temperatures are falling and we're seeing single-digit Celsius on a regular basis. It's tempting to think, oh, that's hydration problems out of the way until March. No need to worry now, no need to drink on a regular basis or anything like that. Save that for the spring and summer months. But it's not quite that simple. Your personal hydration requirements, the amount of fluid that you have to consume on your particular winter rides, that will be, well, unique to you. And it will depend on a number of factors. It'll depend on your aerobic engine, the percentage intensity that you're riding at, the clothes that you're wearing, and obviously the climate that you're riding in and through. It makes it very difficult to sort of come up with a figure or even a narrow range and say, thou shalt drink so many millilitres per hour. But if we assume that typical winter riding, you might need somewhere between 400 and 600 millilitres per hour. One of the things, a rule of thumb that's been around for a long time, but I think it's worth stating, is that if you lose 2% of your lean body weight in fluid, then your performance really starts to suffer. It drops off a cliff, for want of a better term. And for an 80-kilo rider, 80 kilos lean, I remember those days, then you're looking at 1.6 kilograms. We'll do some sweeping generalizations and say that is around 1.6 litres, meaning that you could set off and you could probably ride at this time of year for about 3 hours, and you'd be on the line of suffering adverse performance due to dehydration, but you'd manage. But I generally think that it's not good practice to take things right to the line, because you're stressing your body. As that level of dehydration kicks in, your blood pressure will be rising, your cardiovascular system will have to work harder, and just general, I don't think it's good practice. It's the same as riding right on the edge of bonk. It's not good to keep stressing your body like that and pushing your cortisol levels up. I think it's far better to, if you're aware of that, to address it and at least consume a reasonable amount of carbs and a reasonable amount of liquid. Now, one of the difficulties riding when the ambient temperature is much lower, your central processing unit, in other words, it turns your personal thirst impulse down. So the need for drinking, you almost forget about it because your body turns it down. And so you have to remind yourself to drink. You might be reluctant to drink perhaps because the fluids are cold and they're unpleasant. But also you just don't have the same thirst impulse. It's possible, I would say, I think some people set reminders, little timers, repeating timers on the head units or the sports watch, so that every 15 minutes, drink. It can be a little bit impractical if that 15 minutes goes off when you're halfway up some massive hill or you're descending at speed or whatever. But just these little reminders say, hey, don't forget, drink. Now, cold, dry air actually increases respiratory loss. It has a dehydrating effect. Well, I mean, yeah, okay, for winter cycling in Yorkshire, we don't get that much very cold, very dry air. But it's a point worth noting. I know from my days in high-altitude mountaineering, you had that factor of cold, dry air plus altitude, and you could become dehydrated very quickly, despite not feeling as if you wanted to drink. When you're wearing winter clothing, even good, technical, modern winter clothing, it's generally heavier. It covers, obviously, a greater percentage of your body area. It's probably got a degree of windproofing and waterproofing, and therefore it's not going to be as breathable. So if your cycling is what I would term as, intermittent in terms of intensity, hilly stuff, you're very likely that you're going to get a little bit too warm on the climbs, and the clothing will protect you on the descents. But in getting too warm on the climbs, you are accelerating yourself towards a dehydration state. If you're very careful and you're riding either on a power meter or on a heart rate monitor, keeping a careful eye on intensity, you'll probably be okay. But if you're riding on speed or perception of speed at winter, on a winter bike, on winter tyres, with guards, with heavier stuff, with thicker clothing that's maybe less aerodynamic, then you require more effort to ride at a given speed. So, whether you're aware of it or not, you could very well find yourself riding harder for, pootling speed at winter than you would be at summer. And that again increases the likelihood of sweating and dehydrating and bumps up your need for fluid. Now, I've already touched on the unpalatability of semi-frozen bottles. I often talk about slush puppy. I remember slush puppies after swimming in the 80s. Whilst they're a pleasant treat after swimming, you don't necessarily want them when you're out on a bike in cold air. And it's something else that can just discourage you from regular drinking. You think, no, I'll get sore throat, I'll hurt my teeth, stomachache, all the rest. It just puts you off drinking, and therefore your fluid intake drops. And once more, you're nudging towards that state of dehydration. And then you get home and you'll have to put the kettle on and you'll be consuming pint after pint of tea or, whatever the fashionable, well-dressed cyclist of today drinks when they get home from a ride. One way around that would be to make your bottles with aired water at the beginning. Before you set out there, you use a mixture of tap water and kettle water so that your bottles are filled maybe with 30 or 40 Celsius liquid. You set off, it won't retain that heat for very long, but at least for maybe the first 30, 40 minutes, it slows down the cooling effect of a low ambient temperature. An extension on that, something that was brought to my attention in comments on the last video, is buying a cycling-specific bottle, a bidon. One make mentioned was Zefal Arctica Pro, I think they call them. They're not expensive, not prohibitively expensive. I think they're maybe about £8 each for a 750ml bottle. And I haven't got one to show you, but they use, as far as I can tell you, a dual layer system. So they have an inner vessel and then an outer bidon. And that allows you to insulate the liquids that you're carrying. So you can take that stage that I just described a little further. You can make aired water from your kettle and your tap into the insulated bidon. And I think Zefal claim that it will keep a liquid warm or cold for up to 2.5 hours. They don't say under what conditions, but you imagine that if you're giving it a start with a nice warm drink, it might stay palatable for the full length of the ride. And that has to be worth a try, doesn't it? What I've done, rather than the dedicated insulated bidon pattern, I have used one of these. Let's have a look if we can see that. It's a TPU runner's flask. This is a 500ml flask with a fairly narrow valve, and it fits nicely in a jersey pocket. And if you make that with aired liquid, it's like putting a little hot water bottle over one of your kidneys, and it just helps to, it gives you a warm start to a ride. But also, if you're sandwiching it between your layers, inner jersey and an outer jersey, it's tucked behind there, out of the wind, it's insulated, and it means that then, if you've managed to drink in the first hour pre-warmed liquid, as that's cooling, you can then fish out your TPU bottle and top up, and hopefully that'll be somewhere around body heat because of where you've been storing it. And it just gives you that little bit of extra encouragement to drink on cold days. And why I like these TPU bottles, when you've emptied them, I use mine mainly as a reservoir. Rather than making exotic drinks in there, I just use them as a reservoir, as a fluid carrying mechanism. And they pack down to this, which you can see they're really not much bigger than a wrapper for biscuits or something. It's ideal. So then you put them back in your pocket and forget about it next time. I would say with TPU, it's probably best to not make the fluid too hot. I would say 30 to 40 is probably wise, because even though these are marked as saying PVC free, BPA free, so they're supposedly safe from emitting harmful plastic particles, I wouldn't chance it by making 50 or 60 Celsius drinks in there. It could probably damage the plastic. But just generally speaking, for the price of them, I think it gives you another option, and I would typically use those maybe on and off for 4 months, and then come spring, throw them away. They've done their job, and they haven't cost a lot of money. They just give you that little option of a top-up reservoir of comfortable temperature liquid. If you want to take things a little further in terms of warm drinks, then I saw, looking around, that Elite, they make dedicated cycling stainless steel bottles. I saw them, I think 550ml costing on offer. I saw them with £23 and RRP around £30. And they're essentially a stainless steel flask that fits in a bottle cage, and they've got a cycling bottle valve on top. I've got mixed feelings about that, because generally, I think if you're making seriously warm liquids at 70 or 80 C, you don't necessarily want to drink that bottle style while you're riding. It might give you quite a shock if you're dealing with low ambient temperatures. I'd sooner, for the time it takes, use something like this, which is a Common or Garden 500ml stainless steel flask, and think, right, okay, I'm 1.5 hours in, I'm going to stop, I'll pour myself a cup out of the flask, I'll drink it at my own rate, even if I'm at the side of the road for 1 or 2 minutes. I'm putting 250ml of genuinely warming liquid in there, whether you want to add sugar or whatever, or honey to it for a carbohydrate boost as well, and maybe you want to take some caffeine that way too by strong black coffee. Whatever your preference is, you're taking that little stop, and then off you go. And what I like about this, it's just an ordinary off-the-shelf flask. I've wrapped some Gorilla Tape around it. I'm pushing it into a cut-off old cycling bottle. Doesn't rattle, fits into a cage. Great stuff. And I've had this one for years, and I think I paid about a tenner for it, maybe at Tesco or Wilkinson or somewhere like that. You can get them all over the place. And yet it's done, so much sterling service over the years. Interestingly, yesterday morning when I was in the supermarket, I spotted this, which is almost a carbon copy, And this was £4.90, another stainless steel flask. I thought, at £4.90, I'm buying a spare, Picnics galore. Once again, I would be careful with the temperature at which you make outdoor drinks, because the stainless steel flasks are remarkably effective. They will keep your drinks hot for 10 hours or more. And so, you don't want to be making straight out of the kettle 90 or 100 C drinks. You'll be in for a nasty shock, or you'll be blowing on it for a long time at the roadside until you can drink it. You really want to be making pre-cooled drinks, I think. What they used to call tram drivers or bus drivers tea. Little side story, but my uncle, he fought in North Africa and then in Italy, and he was demobbed. They kept them in Central Europe a little longer, so I think he was demobbed in 1946, and he came back home and he got a job driving a tram with Leeds Corporation. He used to joke that in 6 months he went from driving a tank to a tram, and then he knew what real danger was. But what they used to do at the various tram and bus terminus points on the outskirts of Leeds, there were little transport cafes, cabins that would open up and serve, members of the public, but also bus and tram drivers. But they knew if they were serving bus and tram drivers that the people didn't have long. They couldn't sit down and enjoy the luxury of 15-20 minutes perusing the sporting life whilst sipping their tea. So they used to make them pre-cooled drinks, bus driver's tea or tram driver's tea, hence the term. Anyway, completely irrelevant to this discussion, but I thought I'd throw that in there. It's worth mentioning that hot drinks, certainly hot coffee, some people will tell you that it has a diuretic effect, and some people will suggest that drinking a flask of hot coffee while you're out on your rides will dehydrate you quicker than drinking nothing at all. That's not true. There's no, in my experience, there's nothing to support that, and I haven't read anything suggesting that at all. So, whether you want to drink decaffeinated coffee on your ride, or whether you want to take, full-leaded Italian espresso with added muscovado, go for it. Hot drink, good for you psychologically, good for you physically, and there really won't be a significant caffeine-related diuretic effect. And so there we have it. A video devoted to the joys of winter drinking. 'Tis the season to be jolly. That's all for this edition of Clipping In. As always, the comments section is open, and I will see you very soon back out on the Yorkshire roads. Bye-bye.